Hey, what's up? It's Rich Nguyen from Breaking In a Sequence, and you're listening to the Brutally Delicious Podcast.
Anyway, well, thanks for joining us. I appreciate it. I guess the first question, we could just jump right into it. Now that Defy the Algorithm is out and available, how do you feel about it, and what has been the response to it so far?
I am ecstatic that it's finally out because we've been waiting. We've been sitting on this record for quite some time now. And I'm just glad that it's out because now that that's out, we can get out even more music, right?
Right.
We packed everything for this shortly before the pandemic hit and mixed it. And then
so we've been sitting on it the whole time?
Yeah, we've sat on it. We revised not to release it yet. And then, everything started opening back up so we can finally release it. But in that time, we've written more music, and we've evolved beyond that. But so far, from what I've been told, people are liking it. It's just the extension of the sound that we had on Acronym, just a little bit harder, really. Right.
Do you feel that that downtime helped you guys, and I think it probably helped a lot of the bands and people to really hone in on their craft and to really focus on what matters and define themselves a little bit more?
Well, first of all, I'm just going to say that downtime really screwed us, right?
Yes.
It screwed up all momentum that we had, especially for us being a starting band, like being a small band. You need to use, you need to strike when the iron's hot, so to say, right? And the iron completely cooled for us.
Right.
But we did use that time to continue to write, and of course, in the very beginning of it, no one got together. We didn't get together to play because we simply didn't know, right? There were too many unknowns about what was happening for real in the pandemic. So we didn't get together for a few months. And when we did, we just started writing. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. The pandemic slowed us down, but if we didn't have that time, we wouldn't have written the new material that we have currently that is still to be released.
Right. So are you guys planning on, and I'm sure you are, but I haven't seen a routing schedule. Are you guys planning on taking this out on the road?
Yes and no. Right now, honestly, we're, being a small band that we are, we're putting all this out without a label or anything. And there's a lot behind putting out a release that, most people don't even think about. So we're trying to line up everything. Yes, we'll play shows here and there, but I'm not sure we're going to, go full-fledged tour on it. Actually, shortly before we released this record, we jumped in the studio to start tracking drums on our next effort. So I think in between shows and tracking, we're going to try to do that route, right? Shows and tracking.
Sure. So to your point, though, to be fair, I think and maybe you've got a different take on this, I think the music business has changed quite a bit, right? And I think, social media and maybe this pandemic with all these live streams and Zooms has sort of normalized or leveled the playing field a little bit, because while labels are important, I think the tools are there to be able to do it yourself successfully.
Yeah, if you're good at social media.
Yeah, that's the problem, right?
I don't know if you go on social media and you look at my page. I'm almost non-existent there. I don't go on it.
It's a struggle,
all that often.
Sure.
Yeah, I feel like it sucks time away from your day.
Yeah.
And away from life and away from skill building for your real life.
Right.
And that's kind of what Defy the Algorithm is about. Like that title is basically about technology taking over your life, including social media and all that.
But becoming a necessary evil, right? Because to my point, then I guess, you have to be out there promoting yourself. You have to be doing these 7 a.m. Zoom meetings and stuff like that to keep yourself out there.
Yeah, yeah, because otherwise I don't know what to post about myself. I'm not that cool, Like
Right.
I can't
Here's
go
what
on
I'm
there and
having for
post
dinner.
about.
Right.
I know. Oh, I'm going to go to the mall, or people don't care about my thoughts. I don't. I barely care about my thoughts.
Right. Right. So I'm sure there is then a message. So if is there something or a takeaway you want your fans to walk away from after listening to a Breaking In a Sequence record? And I think you alluded to it a little bit, especially this record. But what's the big takeaway?
Um, for me, the big takeaway is basically Defy the Algorithm, and even acronym is all about hearing what our passion is. Right, our passion is music.
Right.
As a band, we love playing music. It's not like we're going out there to become this huge band, because that just doesn't happen anymore.
Right.
Right. And there's no label backing, so we're doing so much legwork outside of what anyone can see. Only other bands would know.
Right.
Um, it has to be a passion at this point.
At the end of the day, though, don't you think that makes it feel or come across as more organic and more real? Because, I mean, you're not really in this to play. It would be ideal to play Madison Square Garden, but that's not the goal. The goal is just to get out there and play your music the way you write it, and to try and connect with fans, which I think makes it super organic, right?
Kind of, yeah. I mean, it's to be heard, right? I don't know if you're a musician or not, but every musician, I don't care what you say, every musician out there that's a true musician just wants to be heard,
Right.
right? I think that should be the core motivation behind playing, not to become rich and famous and
Right.
hookers and blow and all that crap. I'm talking like you just want to be heard, and true musicians, once a musician, always a musician, right?
Yes.
So you're always going to love music.
Yeah, and I think even beyond musicians, because I'm a hack. I played when I was in high school or whatever. But I think once music gets you, especially the harder, heavier stuff, once it like just bites you somewhere along the way, it's something that stays with you like forever. Because for me, like I can remember the day I walked into a record store in high school, across the street from the high school, and there was this Diary of a Madman record on the wall, and I had never seen or heard of Ozzy before, and I was like, "Fuck, what's this?" And I bought it home, and the first 3 seconds of the Over the Mountain set me off on a course that has never changed since. I'm in a quest for all this heavy stuff, and it gets in your blood, right?
Right. I think it's different now for kids. But yeah, I know exactly what you mean, because in those days you would go home and you would listen to that album front to back. You listen to
Mm-hmm.
that record front to back, and you would just keep playing it and playing and playing until you remembered, until you got the track listing down and everything like that. Right. So in your head, you knew what song was coming next, but that's not how music's digested anymore. It's
Oh,
digested by singles. It's digested by playlists, which is basically a shuffle of different artists. So you're not getting the full take on the artist anymore. And I think like a lot of bands, their fans don't even get their deep cuts anymore because they're not listening to their album all the way
yeah, I
through
don't think there
anymore.
is such a thing as deep cuts anymore, right? Because everybody's doing I do a lot of these podcasts, and most, probably 80% of the people we talk to or more, are doing just the new single model. Like every 6 weeks we've got a new single, and the whole long form vinyl, like you just talked about, is almost non-existent, which I think is a
I
shame.
know.
Maybe I'm old school, but I think it's a shame, because it was a whole process of going to the record store on a Tuesday with your paper route money, and buying that record that you read about, and then sitting, like you said, for days on end on the floor, like in front of your stereo, just digesting every bit of that.
Yep, with the booklet and everything,
Yeah.
just reading everything that they had to say, trying to get into their mind. I mean, I wish it was still like that, because that, to me, yeah, I'm old school like that. I like that kind of stuff, and I feel like that builds a better connection with the listeners than social media does, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
And downloading once, like my son, they download one song and then it's on his playlist, like you said, and it is what it is. But there's no full length kind of thing, or you're not getting into the story or the way the record was sequenced. That was a whole art form as
Yeah,
well, right? The ebbs and flows of the way
absolutely.
the music the
Yeah,
music flowed.
the
Sorry.
flow. Yeah, yeah,
But
absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And, you know, some of our fans, I mean, David's fans would like us to put out a full LP, right? But us being so small,
It doesn't make sense. Yeah. And that's a
So
shame.
that's
It's
the
sort of caught in the
problem.
middle, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, it is what it is. But I think that if you combine the two EPs that we've released so far, you get a good sense of where we're growing,
Right.
you know, because we have grown a lot since Acronym, and we'll grow again once we release the next one.
Right. When you guys
You
are
know,
writing, are you writing like with the live setting in mind, like how it's going to come across on stage, or are you writing the song just for a song's sake?
well, David likes to write it on how it would feel live,
Hmm.
right? So David will always say, "Oh, this tempo's wrong. We need to make it more bouncy. We need to make it like this." And then he lets me basically control the structuring of the song around my vocals, right? And the guys just they play to the energy of the track. So
Okay.
it's kind of like a whole melding process of different things.
Is the writing process very collaborative, or is it more the efforts of one person?
Very collaborative. So how we write is the guys will get into a room without me because I live about 80 miles north of them.
Hmm.
They'll get into a room and they'll jam out. So either someone will bring in a riff or there'll be a beat that David's playing and the guys just start jamming on it. And what they'll do is they'll jam out about 20 minutes on like different riffs and record it. They'll record multi-track stems for me. And then they'll send it to me via like Google Drive or Dropbox or something. And so they've worked on the song for like hours and hours already. So their ears are dead to it. When I hear the multi-tracks that they send, I have fresh ears.
Right.
So I'll hear, oh, okay, this is great. So I'll cut the track into sections, and then I'll repiece it together to how I hear certain parts. So parts that they hear as choruses, I might hear as a verse or a bridge or something like that. So I'll repiece together the song and then send it back to them. And then they'll listen to it and learn it. And then while they're learning it, I will write my vocals over it. And then once I have my vocals over it, I send it back to them and they'll rewrite their parts around my vocals so that everything flows properly.
Gotcha. So it goes back and forth for a little bit.
Yeah, it's like a multi-stage process. And then we'll go down there after the song's done and we'll actually play it live. And then whatever doesn't work, we'll adjust there too.
And that's an interesting thing. I know we're being very nostalgic on here, and that wasn't the intent of the whole podcast. But that's another thing that I think is very different than a lot of other bands, because now with the technology and with the coming out of the pandemic and all this other stuff, most of it, or a lot of the people I talk to, are doing it all electronic and like meeting up when it's time to prep for the show. There's none of that old school, like you just said, bouncing things off each other in a room and realizing how, this doesn't work, or maybe the tempo is off or something. That, I think, makes it also sound very more organic as well.
Absolutely. And, you just hit on a point that I like to talk about in interviews and with my friends. Technology has gotten to the point where it's almost kind of killed rock music, right? Because I understand this, but rock bands will go in or metal bands will go in and record, and it's cheaper to program your drums than it is to go into a studio with all your drums, mic them up, and spend the time to get your drum tracks right the way that you want them to feel. Right. So all the drums are gridded to hell, right? On a grid, they're quantized.
Yep.
The whole song is just the same tempo. There's no swing anymore. The vocals are all processed to be perfect. Guitar lines are perfect. So what that has done is it's taken out all stylistic attributes from.
Yeah, it's
from
like surgically precise, and it doesn't.
Yeah,
I don't think it works. I understand for sure.
Yeah. So I think that has killed rock music because you don't have those singers that do their certain little things. You don't have those players like John Bonham, with their swing feel. You don't have that feel anymore. Everything is a robotic sounding to me. Mm-hmm. So I'm fully against that. And now with technology getting so good, there's bands using auto-tune live. There's all these backing tracks that everyone's using. And I don't mind backing tracks, but I feel like I'm used to seeing a band without it.
Yes.
And it's cool to hear the difference of the song live than on the record, right? You don't want to play it exactly to the record, because what's the point? Might as well just play the record, right, and lip sync along and whatever.
And save the $65-$70 of ticket or whatever it is. Right. I 100% agree.
Yeah. So that's my thing. I mean, and during the pandemic, a lot of bands live streamed and all that, but they went in and they corrected and auto-tuned themselves before they released that stuff. And if you listen to our live stuff, yeah, I'm pitchy, but hey, guess what? I'm human. I think
it's real.
Music's meant to be human. Yeah.
Right. No, that makes sense. And I know some of the live streams I saw were, like you said, corrected or whatever, but there was some that would just blew my mind. I don't know if you're a Catatonia fan, but Catatonia did one right at the beginning. They were one of the first ones to do like a really big scale, and it was so freaking good. They were on it.
Really? I gotta go check that out if it's out there.
Yeah, hopefully it still is. It was like, I don't know, right shortly after the pandemic started, when everything started in lockdown, they did this from one of their studios over in Sweden, and it was just mind blowing how great it was. But then I've seen others that were not.
I think I saw that. I think I actually saw that, and I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And see, so that's the positive note here. Since everything is gridded and everything is robotic on the recording, and bands are trying to sound like the recording, musicians have gotten so much better, right? They've gotten so much better on one hand, but they lost their stylistic traits on the other hand. So there's got to be a balance.
Yeah, but here's another thing I'll just throw out there, and I know we're way off the topic of breaking into sequence. I'm sorry, we just kind of rambled, but
no, we're talking music.
I think there's
breaking into sequence right there.
I think there's going to be, and maybe it's already started, a sort of artistic renaissance, because everyone's been in their basement or their studio or their garage or whatever for the last 2 years, honing their craft and practicing. And maybe not just in music, maybe in painting and photography or whatever, but I think we're on like the cusp of this crazy artistic renaissance, because everybody's now, the gates have opened and it's like, hey, let's go.
I hope so. I mean, I can honestly say I hope so. I just feel like maybe the new musicians or the musicians that have re-picked up their instruments during this time, I just hope that they go out and form bands, right? You're not seeing bands being formed anymore like you used to, at the rate that you used to. You're seeing Guitar Center and even Gibson, didn't they file for bankruptcy? Gibson Guitars? I mean, that tells you something right there.
Oh, yeah.
So basically what happens is, once all these bands are done, or, people lose the passion for it, the world's going to be ruled by electronic music and pop music.
And it's funny you said that too.
It's completely gridded.
I feel sometimes worried, because some of our idols, like I mentioned Ozzy, and some of our idols are way up there in age, and they're not going to be long here. And I think that's going to die with them, is all this tradition of playing live music and really bouncing stuff off each other in the studios and doing all that stuff that we're talking about here. You're right. It's going to be all electronic. That's all people are going to know.
I know. And it's really sad. I mean, this year, Dream Theater won a Grammy finally, right? After so long, but it wasn't even televised, because rock music is being shielded, to everyone, to the majority of people. And if you watch television, it's looked down upon to even be in a band these days, right? Oh, he's in a band,
right?
There's so many things wrong, and then you don't see these new bands, you don't see new supergroups forming, right? I think the last group of supergroups was from the 2000s. And the reason why you don't see that is because, people digest music differently.
Very right.
People aren't, you're not going to make as much money off of it. So you're not going to dedicate your life and time to playing music anymore. People just want to be famous these days.
Yeah.
Like quick fix, 15 minutes of fame or whatever. And I just feel like the fan base and listeners aren't letting bands build to their final form, to their full potential. Mm-hmm. Right? You don't see that evolution of bands anymore because they kind of die on the vine.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's crazy. Anyway, so we're coming to the end here. What's next for Breaking In a Sequence? What can we look forward
to? Shows and more music. I mean, we've spent the last 2 years not releasing music, not playing shows. So we just want to get out there and play shows and release music and do what we can before we die on the vine, so to speak, or whatever. I mean, again, this is a passion. We don't have a label behind us or anything. So we're doing it all ourselves.
Right.
And if you're not in a band out there and you're wondering, how come you don't release music more frequently? Go look at what it takes to release music, from studio to PR to artwork, album, everything like that. There's a lot going on behind the scenes that you're just not aware of.
Yep. Thank you, my friend. Hope that wasn't too bad.
No, it was great. I love just having an organic conversation.
Yeah, I like to just chat. I have a list of questions I had here or topics, but we kind of usually end up just wandering, and I think that makes for a better show. So,
absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for taking the time.
Conversation.
Yeah, excellent. Be well, my friend. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Talk to you soon. Right now. Bye.
Ever wonder what a punch from Elton John feels like?
Or how you'd cope with having turned down the chance to be in Nirvana?
Or what signal Keith Richards gives when he wants you to get the hell out of his hotel room?
Fans of Too Much Effing Perspective don't have to wonder, because they've heard these exact stories and a jillion others on our podcast. I'm Alex Hoffman, former tour manager for Radiohead.
And I'm musician and comedy writer Alan Keller. On the TMEP show, we get guests like Nancy Wilson from Heart, Jeremiah Freites from the Lumineers, and Modern Family's Julie Bowen to tell us things they may have only shared with their therapist, clergy, or a TMZ stringer.
So join us on Too Much Effing Perspective. That's EFFING Perspective. The only podcast you crank up to 11.